Most people think money changes your life when it gets loud. The penthouse, the black car, the watch that looks like a dare. That's not how it actually happens. Your life changes long before it looks impressive. It changes in silence, in private, in the way your chest feels on a random Tuesday, in the kind of phone calls that can ruin your week, in whether a bad month is an inconvenience or a threat, in whether you can tell the truth when your boss lies to your face, in whether you stay in the relationship that's draining you because you're scared, or because you choose to. That's the part people miss. Net worth is not a score for how rich you look. It's a measure of how many mistakes, shocks, humiliations, and delays your life can absorb before you break. And once you understand that, the 5 levels that matter are not the ones social media sells you. They're the ones where your relationship to risk, time, and self-respect fundamentally changes. Because a person with a 6-figure salary and no net worth is still fragile. A person with a modest lifestyle and real assets can be harder to control than someone who earns 3 times more. And the biggest shift is not when you finally feel rich. It's when the world loses a little bit of leverage over you. That's what money really buys first. Leverage removal. The first level is negative net worth, and this is where a shocking number of adults live while pretending they don't. This is not just, I owe some money. Negative net worth means your past is charging interest on your future. It means you are moving, but something invisible is tied to your ankle. Every paycheck arrives already spoken for. Every decision is crowded by old decisions. The car loan, the credit card, the student debt, the overdraft, the buy now pay later nonsense that felt harmless until it became your atmosphere. And the damage here is not just financial. It is cognitive. It is emotional. It is moral. Because when your net worth is negative, urgency becomes your landlord. You don't get to think in clean lines. You think in patches. You think in escapes. You become vulnerable to stupid opportunities because pain makes bad offers look like rescue. You tolerate disrespect because you cannot afford a gap. You stay in the job that is hollowing you out because the rent is due before your courage arrives. People love to say, just budget better. That advice is often delivered by someone speaking from the memory of stress, not the reality of it. When you're negative, the problem is not just arithmetic. The problem is that your entire life becomes shorter range. You stop asking, what's the best long-term move? And start asking, what keeps the fire from reaching the bedroom tonight? That is a brutal way to live. It also explains why the move from negative net worth to merely zero is one of the most important financial transformations in existence. Not sexy, not Instagrammable, but enormous. Because zero is not nothing. Zero is oxygen. At zero net worth, you are not rich. You are not free. You are barely visible to the wealth game. But one very important thing has changed. Your past is no longer actively eating your future. You have stopped digging. And that matters more than people admit, because there is a huge psychological difference between climbing and crawling out. At zero, every dollar you save actually stays yours. Every step forward is real. You're still vulnerable, still exposed, still one bad surprise away from panic, but you are no longer in reverse. That's why some people feel strangely proud at a number that looks unimpressive on paper. They should. They've done something harder than buying luxury. They've neutralized momentum in the wrong direction. But don't romanticize this level either. Zero net worth is peace compared to debt, but it is still fragile peace. One medical bill, one layoff, one transmission failure, one family emergency, and you can be thrown backward with humiliating speed. You haven't escaped volatility, you've just stopped feeding it. Then comes the level people underestimate the most, around $10,000 in net worth. Not because 10,000 is a magical number. In some cities, it barely covers a month or two of living, but because this is usually the first level where money stops being theoretical and starts acting like a shock absorber. This is where life gets quieter. You can handle a deductible, a flight home for an emergency, a broken appliance, a sudden move. You don't have to borrow dignity from next month every time reality gets expensive. You stop negotiating with every inconvenience like it's a hostage crisis. And if you've never had that buffer, you may not understand how radical it feels. The rich talk about freedom in abstract philosophical terms. That's cute. For most people, freedom first arrives as the ability to solve a problem without begging, without swiping, without spiraling, and without turning a $700 setback into a 3-year debt story. $10,000 doesn't buy status. It buys a reduction in drama, which is why people who've never been unstable misunderstand it completely. They think life changes when you can afford upgrades. No, life changes when routine problems stop becoming emotional events. But this level has its own trap, because the moment people get a little breathing room, they often confuse relief with arrival. They loosen up too fast, upgrade the apartment, finance the nicer car, inflate the identity, start performing the version of themselves they think they were denied before, and then the buffer disappears. That is one of the most common financial self-sabotages in adult life, turning a small moat into decorative landscaping. Because the real power of early net worth is not what it lets you buy, it's what it lets you avoid becoming again. Then somewhere around $100,000, life changes in a way that is almost invisible from the outside and unmistakable from the inside. This is where money begins to alter your posture. At this level, assuming your lifestyle hasn't metastasized to consume everything, you are not just surviving surprise anymore. You are gaining options, real ones. You can leave the bad job and not immediately collapse. You can take a few months to reset. You can relocate without it feeling like a military operation. You can say no more honestly. You can think longer. You can negotiate harder. You can make a decision because it is strategically right, not because it keeps this month intact, and that changes your personality more than people realize. A lot of what people call confidence is just reduced financial fragility. A lot of what they call calm is a funded margin of error. A lot of what they call maturity is simply what happens when every inconvenience is no longer interpreted as danger. At 100,000, the world starts treating you differently, but not because it knows your number. It reacts to the fact that you react differently. You're less desperate, less available for manipulation, less likely to tolerate nonsense for immediate cash, less frantic in rooms designed to trigger insecurity. This is also the level where compounding finally stops feeling fake. Before this, saving can feel insulting. You move money around, make good choices, and your life still looks basically the same. That gap between discipline and visible reward is why so many people quit. But around this point, the machine starts whispering back. The growth becomes noticeable enough to matter, not enough to retire, not enough to disappear, but enough to prove that wealth is not built through dramatic moments. It's built through the boring refusal to self-destruct. And yet this level creates a new delusion. You start feeling smarter than you are. You think the buffer means you've escaped the old rules. You have it. Lifestyle creep can quietly bury it. A bad year in a high-cost life can make it look much smaller than it sounds. This is where many people get cocky too early. They move from disciplined to decorative. They start buying symbols of wealth instead of building the architecture of it. That mistake is expensive because the next level is where the architecture really matters. Around $1 million in net million is not, you made it. Not anymore. Not in a world where housing, healthcare, schooling, taxes, and lifestyle expectations can devour money with astonishing speed. If your entire identity is built on the phrase millionaire, this is where reality slaps you. $1 million can absolutely transform your life, but it does not automatically remove your need to be careful. It does not mean permanent luxury. It does not mean you are untouchable. What it often means is something more important. It means you now have proof. Proof that you can build and keep something substantial. Proof that your life is no longer entirely dependent on active labor this month. Proof that investment income, business equity, or appreciating assets can start doing some work while you sleep. Proof that if you don't panic, posture, or play stupid games, your money can now create distance between you and compulsion. And that distance is everything. Because once you hit 7 figures, the question changes from can I survive to how do I structure my life so I don't have to betray myself for money again? That's the real threshold, not abundance, autonomy. At this level, work itself changes flavor. If you keep working, it's increasingly because you want a bigger future, a stronger position, or a more ambitious game, but the raw terror starts to fade, at least if you haven't built a lifestyle that chains you back to constant income. And some people respond beautifully to that. They become more patient, more selective, more truthful, more creative. They stop chasing every dollar and start protecting their attention. Others become weird. Because money doesn't only remove pressure, it reveals character. When people no longer have to say yes, you find out what they actually value. Some discover purpose, others discover emptiness. Some realize they never wanted wealth, they wanted relief. And once relief arrives, they have no larger structure to place their life inside. That's why the $1 million level can feel strangely destabilizing. The external struggle that organized your identity begins to fade. And if you haven't built an internal one, success can feel disorienting instead of triumphant. Then there's the level people talk about endlessly and understand almost not at all. Around $10 million in net worth, your life changes less through consumption than through insulation. This is where the world becomes negotiable. You don't just buy things, you buy time back in chunks. You buy legal help before a problem becomes catastrophic. You buy expert advice before a mistake becomes public. You buy tax strategy, margin, optionality, privacy, convenience, and the ability to make decisions that would look reckless at lower levels but are actually buffered by the scale beneath you. At 10 million, a bad year is still a bad year. Losses still hurt. But the odds that one mistake, one market dip, one broken appliance, one move, one health scare, one dry quarter destroys your position are radically lower if the money is properly structured. And that changes behavior in a way most people misread. They think rich people are calm because they are wiser, sometimes. But often they are calm because the consequences are padded. They can afford a wrong move. They can survive a delayed payoff. They can wait while other people flinch. And in markets, careers, negotiations, and business, the person who can wait usually humiliates the person who can't. That's why extreme wealth often looks like confidence from a distance. What you may actually be seeing is shock absorption. And here's the darker truth. Once people reach this level, money stops being about comfort and starts becoming about control, status within elite circles, and protection against irrelevance. The numbers get bigger, but the psychology doesn't become noble. It often becomes turns from, how do I get safe, to how do I stay above? Different pressure, different language, same human appetite. So no, the story is not that every new net worth level simply makes you happier. That is the childish version. The adult version is that each level changes what can hurt you, what you notice, what you tolerate, and what kind of lies become available to you. Negative net worth lies to you by saying survival is all you can think about. Zero lies by making you feel safe when you're only stable for the moment. 10,000 lies by making relief feel permanent. 100,000 lies by making you feel sophisticated. 1,000,000 lies by making you think the game is over. 10 million lies by making you think you're beyond ordinary fear. You're not. You're just negotiating with fear at a different altitude, and that's the real reframe. The point of building net worth is not to win some vulgar status contest. It is to reduce the number of people, institutions, accidents, and impulses that can force your hand. It is to move from reaction to intention, from panic to patience, from being managed by circumstance to being able, at least sometimes, to manage yourself. That's why two people can earn the same income and live in completely different realities. One has nothing behind the performance, the other has built layers beneath the floorboards. Same salary, different nervous system, same city, different life, because net worth is hidden infrastructure. It doesn't always show in the clothes, the car, the vacation photos, the curated apartment, the restaurant bill, the clean LinkedIn story. It shows up in the things no one claps for: the unhurried decision, the willingness to walk away, the refusal to tolerate a toxic boss, the ability to help a parent without self-destruction, the capacity to endure a slow season without becoming a different person. That's wealth before it becomes spectacle. And if you take anything from these 5 levels, let it be this. The first goal is not to look rich. The first goal is to become harder to shake, harder to scare, harder to rush, harder to own. Because when people say money changes you, that's only half true. What it really changes is how easily the world can change you against your will. And that might be the most valuable upgrade of all.